Imagine you just bought a brand new house and community, nice community, made up of mostly senior citizens in the state of California. You know the area is prone to fire because of the drought that's been lasting for 10 years, but you think to yourself, it's not going to happen to me. It never will. Your community hosts a meeting to discuss the drought and dead piled up foliage all over the county and the possibility of trained wildland firefighters, such as myself, coming in to perform prescribed burns. Community leaders have asked the National Forest Service to explain to the people that the burns will be beneficial to the environment and prevent large wildfires from destroying their communities or wiping out entire towns, because they can move at acres a second in some areas and they burn that quick. It'll be beneficial for the environment. A large majority of the people who are senior citizens, so these people grew up, these people were born in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, so they grew up with Smokey Bear slogan. A large majority state they're concerned that they were taught to leave the forest alone and not touch it at all. Just let nature do its thing. Even though the National Forest Service experts explain how scientific data has shown the disturbance is good for the forest, the people were not swayed at all. At the end, everybody ended up voting no on it, except for a few people who were younger and who understood what the scientists were talking about. That very same night, you wake up at a banging on your door. The sheriff tells you need to evacuate your home due to a wildfire that's moved into your neighborhood, and this could have been started by anything: lightning, cigarette butt, car, somebody just being negligent with a match, almost anything. There's even been fires that have started from the sun reflecting off a piece of glass at the right angle, piece of broken glass on the ground. You look back and you see your whole neighborhood's on fire. Everything you worked hard for, your new everything, just family photo albums gone, car melting in your driveway. And you think to yourself, what would have happened if we'd listened? What if we had done the prescribed burns? In reality, controlled burns are actually very beneficial for the environment. They prevent huge wildfires. Wildfires still happen, but they will not happen on the scale such as the Thomas Fire, where you needed 9,000 wildland firefighters. That's a bad fire. That's what happens when you don't do prescribed burns. They also do a lot of good for the environment. The fire helps contain weeds and other growth, so that helps reduce the risk of wildfires. But it also can restore nutrients back in the soil. Fire kills and it rebirths. Fire is the giver and taker of life. Prairies, woods, wetlands are perfect communities for contained fires. What a controlled burn does is, in a fire-prone area, it creates a large fire break. Now these are man-made fire breaks. This would be a natural fire break, because the fire just creeps along the ground. This is a man-made fire break. The reason it creates a fire break is the fire comes up onto the fire break, and it either will slow down so much to where it's just a flame trickling on the ground towards you, or it completely smothers itself out. California has been suffering a drought for the past 10 years. And most of the plants native have died. The only plants that have survived are Acelia, eucalyptus, and salt cedar. These are invasive plants. These plants are high in oil content, so they burn hot and they burn long. They burn as quick as you strike a match. That's how intense they burn. For the past 100 years, we've been focused on preventing any type of fire from starting. So we have literally destroyed our own forest without us knowing it for the past 100 years of not touching it at all. As a result of that, our forests and woodlands are not healthy. We are getting more catastrophic fire behavior. We are getting droughts because the forest can't hold the water it needs because it's just so overgrown. No water gets to the bottom. It gets into the soil. Smokey's Bear slogan of "Only you can prevent forest fires" It was a good idea, but it's just misinterpreted by a lot of people, and even the people who brought it up. It was a hands-off, eyes-only approach. California does not just have one big problem with combating wildfires. California, indeed, every fire-prone state, every state can have wildfires in it. Even Florida. I know it's shocking, but Florida does have some big wildfires. Has a problem with wildfires. The first problem is the climate. Most people know global warming is melting the ice caps. CO2 is getting trapped in the atmosphere. It is creating the perfect condition for wildfires. It's not a fire season anymore. It's a fire year. People, it is getting hotter and there is less humidity, so wildfires are getting bigger, stronger, and lasting longer. The second problem is manpower. When we do a prescribed burn at our park, we have maybe 30 people who do it with us, and this is for only a park that's 3,300 acres. That's 3,300 acres. That's pretty small for a park. The manpower. Even though California has its own state wildland firefighters called CAL FIRE, those firefighters even need structure firefighters help. Structure and wildland don't mingle too well because they're two different firefighters. Even though California needs to call wildland firefighters from their state to help combat fire, the recent fires have become too big for CAL FIRE's firefighting resources. And the big thing is resources. It is stupidly expensive to fight a wildfire. The last few fires have stretched California's resource limit beyond the limits. The third biggest problem is that California it's expensive to fight wildfires. This aircraft is a 747. It hauls 5,000 gallons of retardant, which doesn't put the fire out, but it stops the fire. That was a $250 million piece of equipment. And it costs about $100,000 to fly it every time. And this piece of equipment will drop 20, 30, 40 loads a day. You add that up, that's a lot of money. The U.S. Department of Agriculture said the Forest Service spending on fire suppression in recent years has gone from 15% of the budget to 55% of the budget, or maybe even more. Which means we have to keep borrowing more funds that are intended for forest management we have to end up hoarding all the money that is intended for fire prevention because we're afraid we're going to, quote, need it for actual firefighting. What this means is they have the money, but they only have the money for one thing. It's a double-edged sword. Work with the forest to prevent fires, aka prescribed burns, or you save all that money to fight the actual fire. You're a double-edged sword because no matter what, you're going to have fire and it's going to be out of control. It means we can't do the prescribed burns, harvesting or insect control that prevents leaving fuel loads in the forest for future fires to feed on. That's wrong, and that's no way to manage a forest. What PREDRU means is the Forest Service doesn't have enough money to both prevent fires. It also has to choose between preventing fires, controlled burns, or fighting fires when they accidentally occur, which is more dangerous. For the Forest Service, this is a double-edged sword to a budgetary constraint. It's not just the Forest Service budget that suffers from wildfires. The whole state's economy, the whole country suffers from wildfire. It costs the government a lot of money. These fires that ripped through California from October to the end of December in 2017, that cost $180 billion. That's almost a quarter of our military's budget. To rebuild and repair everything that was destroyed, those fires that were going to affect the economy and probably cause tax increase in the future for the American citizens, CAL FIRE exceeded their $426 million budget and ended up spending $700 billion. They almost spent $1 billion just on fire alone. These huge fires could have been easily prevented by performing prescribed burns, cleaning up the land. These areas would have been greatly reduced, the cost and the size of fires. The big takeaway is that only, quote, you can prevent forest fires is still true, but it does not mean the forest doesn't benefit from professional management that includes controlled burning. People need to be informed that controlled burnings benefits fire-prone locations. Cleaning debris and rejuvenating the land. A smaller controlled fire now can be prevented a huge out-of-control fire that becomes a hazard to life and property. Basically, what a controlled burn is just a makeover for, literally just a haircut for a forest. And this is a picture of what a normal, healthy forest should look like. Thank you.